Hello and welcome to another week and another edition of Swinging from the Hip, episode 23, right here for your cricketing fix for the week. And today on the show, we'll be doing a quick recap of the results from the IPL, and hopefully by then, after that, our guests have arrived. So I'm flying solo at the moment, and it's been a long day. So if I fade a bit, you'll understand. But as I said, hopefully our guests would have arrived by the time I've done the IPL wrap, and we'll be able to have a look at the impact that COVID is making on community cricket in New Zealand. If we don't, well, I'll have to waffle on like a couple of weeks ago, and we'll have to reschedule for the COVID chat. Anywho, but as usual, we'll take the trip down memory lane first, before we look at the news that was from this week. So here we go into the week in history, September 19th in 2007, and what a cracker to start with. Yuvraj Singh becomes only the second batsman after Herschel Gibbs to hit six sixes in an over in an international cricket game. Oh, we've got someone popping in. This time it was against England in the T20 World Cup. And it's at Kingsmead in Durban. And the unlucky bowler was Stuart Broad. And bonus time, it was also the fastest century in all forms of international cricket. He got to 50 in just 12 balls. So while I'll just take a little break there and we'll continue in a second, because we're going to bring in Taryn, who's arrived. So that's great. Taryn, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm relieved.
Oh, what's that?
So anyhow, I'll carry on with this week in cricket, and we move on to 1986 and another awesome one. This is making up for last week, which was a bit boring. Dean Jones scored Australia's first double century in India. Now, during the innings, he had nausea on the pitch, and I think that means that he chucked up, and was put on a drip after the innings. Now, in the second dig, he didn't get a lot. He got 24, but it helped to get to the result of only the second ever tied test in history. We'll come to that a bit more a little bit later. Now, moving on to the 20th of September in 1982, and wow, they just keep coming. The first hat trick in one day international matches in Hyderabad by Jalal Uddin removed Rod Marsh, Bruce Yardley, and Jeff Lawson with the last three balls of his seventh over in that match. Moving on to the 21st of September, 1963 in Swiss village in Antigua, one of the great fast bowlers was born, Curtly Ambrose. And I'll never forget his slower delivery that bowled out Ian Healy in the Benson and Hedges World Series. Ian Healy swung last week and the ball arrived 2 weeks after that. This is a fantastic delivery, isn't it? And then watching Curtly Ambrose just falling over laughing was fantastic. Now, moving on to the 22nd of December, and I mentioned September, not December, getting to Christmas already. September. I mentioned earlier Dean Jones inning in this match in 1986, the last day of the second tied test in history. Alan Border had set India 348 to win from a minimum of 87 overs. And it looked good for India at tea time. They were 190 for two. And even better, they were 330 for six, and with 18 needed off 5 overs left. And then it all changed a little bit. In the final over the match, Ravi Shastri took two and then a single off the first three balls of the over, and the scores were tied. And then Greg Matthews trapped Maninder Singh, the final wicket, with the penultimate delivery of the match. So it went. Not only was it a tied match, but it actually went down to the wire of the last over of the match. And in 2005, on the same day, last test before Zimbabwe voluntarily withdrew from the format. And in that match, they broke their run of innings defeats. They lost by 10 wickets instead. So moving on to the 23rd of September, 1979. And after a tough day in the field against India in Bangalore, Rodney Hogg, after being no-balled 11 times in just 6 overs, finally had enough, and he bowled a beamer at the batsman. And then he kicked all the stumps out of the ground and he stormed off the field. Now, only some quick action by Kim Hughes with apologies to the umpires and some contrition from Rodney Hogg himself avoided further action being taken after the game. But it would have been, yeah, I wouldn't mind going back into YouTube and trying to find some footage of that. That would have been rather interesting. And moving to the 24th of September in 1844, the oldest international rivalry, well, in cricket anyway, began. And no, it wasn't between England and Australia. This was 33 years before the first match between England and Australia was played. It was between USA and Canada in Bloomingdale Park. It was a 2-day game which lasted 3 days because the second day was washed out. And the match ended controversially after the USA batsman George Wheatcroft was not allowed to bat because he turned up 20 minutes following the fall of the previous wicket. So effectively, I suppose that was timed out batsman. 20 minutes is a fair while to wait, though, isn't it? And finally, in 2007, in the first T20 World Cup, which was held in South Africa, India scored 158 batting first, and then managed to hold out Pakistan to hoist the trophy. India's first international trophy since the 1983 ODI World Cup. And that was today in history. Anything that sort of tickled your fancy there in the history logs there, Taryn?
The final, the T20 final.
T20 final, yeah, it was classic because that's actually the same match. If we go back to, I think, my very first one, that was where Uraj hit the 6 sixes as well.
Is that the same one? Is it?
Not the same game, obviously, but the same tournament.
Same tournament, 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember that really well. We obviously I didn't have Sky at our house, and I don't even know if it was on Sky, but yeah, few of my family friends all congregated at one house, and I remember that last ball of the final, looking the other way, not wanting to look to see, and then you see the ball go in the air, and then you turn around and you see, I think it was Srisan at 45 running backwards. Yeah, so I remember that really well. And then I remember the sixes as well from Yuvraj Singh. Actually, I was 2007, so I was flying back from somewhere because I know I was at the airport when the sixes were being hit.
All right.
In one of the chicken area in India. Coming back from India. Yeah.
What? Cricket on TV in India and the
No,
airport?
what? It's
What are the
not.
odds?
I don't know about it now, but it's actually not that. It never was that readily accessible. You needed to have cable TV. Well, you need to have cable TV. It's not a free to air. Stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
So
it was still a bit of an but was a bit strange back then to see it on TV behind a counter.
Oh, not so much. Yeah, not so much in 07, but definitely when my family was actually residing there in the late 80s and early 90s, that was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we still didn't have any. It was just lucky that they played it at the airport.
So we'll move on to the we'll move past the history and we'll move on to what's happened this week in the cricket world. And the IPL kicked off, and I'll go through the results to date shortly, and we will also look at the table, although it's very early doors, and there's obviously not a lot of games being played in the first week. Well, first week's worth of games. And India are in talks with England to boost cricketing ties between the two countries, with the possibility of test series in the UAE on the table. So what they're looking at there is they're talking about the scheduling of the IPL next year, which obviously this year's IPL is quite late because it would have been earlier in the year. So next year's IPL will be earlier in the year. It's normal scheduled time in the UAE, I believe. And what they're talking about is having some test matches following that with England in the UAE. So, and moving on, DRS will be used for the first time in a women's T20 series. That will be the England and West Indies women's series, which has had 2 matches played in already. It'll be the first time outside of a T20 World Cup where the DRS is used in the women's game. The Wellington City Council has jumped the gun on that announcement of the Black Cap schedule of this summer. Well, in Wellington anyway, as they announced through some road closure notices that the games that will be played and when in Wellington. We're still waiting on government approval of the teams coming here, or sanctioning, I suppose you might say, of the teams coming to New Zealand. The Indian women's cricket team is struggling with anxiety as they keep training but don't have any idea of when they'll actually play next. The BCCI postponed their series with England, which was scheduled for July and August in England. And their series with the West Indies and South Africa is also appears to be doomed. Their last game was the T20 World Cup final, and that was their loss to Australia in that game in the final there. So I could imagine that if you've had that you get such a high with the T20 World Cup, you want to basically get back out there, don't you? You would have been waiting, you've been training and training and training, and you just don't get out onto the field. There'll be a bit of would be mentally quite hard.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's tough, I suppose, for the uncertainty that goes with it. But they're not the only ones.
yeah, it,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just
It's
what
a
it is.
tricky situation. Unfortunate. How it's all folded.
Unfold, yeah, that's right. And speaking of the West Indies, they've had their first matches on the tour of England this week, and the second match was just this morning. In the first T20, England scored 163 for 8 and restricted the West Indies women to 116 for 6 in reply. England winning the match by 47 runs. And in the second match today, which was played this morning, England made it through to 151 for 8, and this time restricted the West Indies to just 104 for 8. So England have wrapped up the T20 series with one match still to play. And look, my mind's gone blank on one, but Dotton is one of their top players, and I've forgotten the other, Stephanie. Ah,
Stefania
geez,
Taylor.
yeah, Stephanie Taylor. That's the one. Once they're gone, there doesn't seem to be a lot that follows with the West Indies batting lineup, and it really has to be done up front by those two, doesn't it?
Yeah, I look. It wasn't long ago that they were quite strong. I think it
Mm.
was 2016 when the under-19s and the men's and the women's all won the T20 World Cups, etc. So it wasn't long ago that they were that strong, and they had, I think, a lady called Aguilera. She was a keeper captain, and she
Mm.
was pretty good. Yeah. So to cut a long story short, I don't think they've regressed, but it just shows England and Australia have just moved up the picking order. They're either professional or semi-professional. There's money in it. There's
Yep.
investment, and it's now showing in results.
Yeah, good point. Because I mean, like, that's the thing. If you can focus on your sport because you're getting paid to do it, and you can train, improve your game, it's going to have results, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then it's just showing. I think that's they. Yeah, I don't know if they've regressed, maybe ever so slightly, but yeah, the other teams are just much stronger now. Like South Africa's come from behind and it's really starting to make some serious noise as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go back to that T20 World Cup in Australia, I mean, you saw signs of it there, where teams were getting stronger and getting some good competitive matches happening. I mean, obviously you've got the other teams that are still developing. I mean, you look at the likes of Bangladesh, but them aside, you've still got like your West Indies, your South Africas, and then your New Zealands as well, India, Australia, England, and they really are starting to. Their skill levels are really getting good, and the quality of the games is improving.
Even India, I wouldn't say they're a top four. They probably would be a top four. I wouldn't say the top two nations. I think
England,
they,
Australia.
yeah, and
Yeah.
India as well. I think they are pretty light. They don't have the depth you would
Depth.
expect from an Indian team. They've got what they've got at the top end, and I think it does fall away pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many leagues they have domestically and how they pick their cricketers, etc. So it'll be interesting.
Is there any talk of IPL expanding into a women's format as well?
They started with a couple of exhibition games, then they opened it up to three teams last year, and they were going to try and run that. And I think there has been talk or noise about making it a equivalent event, or not necessarily equivalent, but some form of a women's IPL in time to come, and they were building towards it. But
Yep.
yeah, everything's on pause now.
Everything's, yeah, absolutely. Moving on to with the news, a couple of more items left. The Black Caps batting coaching position appears to be a two-horse race. Luke Ronke has confirmed that he's put his hand up for the role, and it can't be 100% confirmed, but it appears Heinrich Milan, the Auckland Aces coach, has put his hand up as well, although he has neither confirmed nor denied the claim. So one of them will be replacing Peter Fulton, who left the role earlier this year. Plans for crowds at the matches in England seem dashed after a spike in COVID cases in the UK. It looks certain that the government will cancel plans to allow crowds into venues from the 1st of October. And just as we go into the results of the IPR so far, we had drama and controversy in just the second match of the tournament. Firstly, the drama as the match went into Super Over, and the controversy was after the umpire called the Kings 11 for running one short. Replays appear to suggest that in fact the bat was grounded over the line and the run should have stood. Without the one short call, the game would have most likely not gone to a Super Over, with which the Kings 11 lost to in that Super Over to the Delhi Capitals. But we'll have a bit more detail there shortly. And so that's it. And we'll keep looking at the IPL. And first, there's the results for this week. Taryn, did you get a chance to see any IPL action?
Yeah, I did actually. I actually watched that game in question that you're talking about, the Super Over game.
Yep.
And his bet was definitely over the line.
Yep.
And it kind of made me question the whole thing really when it was almost scripted. It was scripted to the point you start suspecting things because of the historical stuff around the game. Because
be careful, you'll get Aaron started about it, you know.
oh
yeah.
You got to give him something to talk about. He's only put in two messages so far.
Yeah, one offensive comment so far only. Yeah.
Yeah, but so it's gone over. Yeah, it's tight. It's obviously tight, but they call it short, and then the commentators go, "Oh, God forbid this game goes to a Super Over," and straight away it was like a light bulb for me. Like, oh wait, I bet this is going to a Super Over.
Yep.
And then you start watching it, and the game kind of yo-yos back and forth. Not necessarily yo-yo, but it has its moments. And then it's down to one run of 5 balls
Yep.
or 4 balls.
Right. Something
And
gettable.
oh no, look, this is what literally was one off something. And then you hear the commentator, I think it was Gavaskar or someone, go, "Oh, is he going to go for glory or is he going to do the smart thing?" So he goes for glory. He's out. Out comes Jordan. Then okay, so just a FYI here, I am watching it on my mobile at 5:30 in the morning. When I should be getting ready for work on a streaming app, which I don't pay for. So it was buffering a fair bit. Um, but then there's a dot ball, and it's 1 to win off 2, 1 to win off 1, and the dude holds out to deep square leg. I'm not questioning anything, but it was just an absolute botch up of a chase in that last over. Yeah,
I'll bring
just
Hussein in
strange.
and he can join our conversation on this one. It's just like, evening, Hussein. Welcome in.
How are you guys?
Hey, how you doing? How you doing?
Yeah, good.
We're just going over the controversial moments in the Kings 11 Delhi Capitals game at the moment. So Taryn's just going through some of the events as they happened, actually. So we'll carry on with Taryn going through. So yeah,
So I never got to watch the Super Over because the web link that I watched was buffering, and I had to get on with my shower and try and get the kids ready.
and get ready because you got to go to work, got to pay the bills.
Yeah, but yeah, like it was a very convenient chase, and I was starting to think, oh look, these kind of things do happen, you know. It's cricket, these things happen, and like, wow, man. You start looking back on the games you played, like, oh, how would you have reacted if this had happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I've joined a fantasy league with some of the kids at my school.
Yep.
Yeah, which is obviously there's a lot of bragging rights involved with the school kids, so that's kind of made me take it a bit more seriously. So each night before I go to bed, I'll read a bit of a preview, make my transfers in the morning, watch a little bit of it, and then check where my points are, and then make sure that I am at the bottom of the table at the moment. So
you did watch the
it's a
show
really
last.
cool way to stay connected.
You did watch the show last week because you got some good insights into where the strengths of each team were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about 3 wines deep as well.
So we'll go through the game. So the first in the tournament opener, Mumbai Indians went down to the Chennai Super Kings. The Indians scored 163 for 5, with the Super Kings reaching that target in the last over with 4 balls to spare, ending up on 166 for 5. We've just been through the controversies and the drama in the Delhi Capitals Kings 11 Punjab game. The Capitals batted first and scored 157 for 8, and the Kings 11 batting second scored exactly the same amount. That's why we went to a super over. And onto the super over, the Kings 11 batted first, and they made an absolute hash of that super over. They lost 2 wickets in there and ended up scoring 3 runs, and leading the Capitals to win 3. They actually ended up bowling a wide in the over to the Capitals as well. So effectively, the Capitals had got the runs off 2 balls.
What are
with
the
wide.
odds of a wide being bowled in a 3-run chase?
A 3-run chase.
You're nodding your head.
Yeah.
There's some serious investment that goes into these getting these tournaments. So
Yeah,
you've got to.
You got to bring the entertainment, right?
good.
Yeah.
Next up with the Royal Challengers Bangalore playing the Sunrisers Hyderabad. Bangalore putting together a very good total, and the Sunrisers looking on target to get there before they fell away badly in the end, handing the Royal Challengers a win by 10 runs. And I've stuffed up there because I didn't even put the scores in when I was writing that out. But look, the Sunrisers were actually on target to score to sort of eclipse the total there, and then their batting just absolutely fell away. And they were, as I said, falling 10 runs short for something that they should have probably made been a successful run chase. Moving on to the fourth match would have to be the match of the tournament so far if you base it on the runs in the scoreboard. But the scorecard doesn't really tell the tale of the match. Rajasthan Royals batted first and amassed a whopping 216 for 7. A total that was going to be hard to overhaul, and so it was for the Chennai Super Kings. They scored 200 for 6, which might suggest that they had a chance. But what that doesn't show is that their score looked better than it was with 3 sixes coming in that final over. And you have to question what MS Dhoni was up to, because he was, with such a big score to chase, he really wasn't going at the rate that he needed to in the early stages of the match, was he? I mean, I know he's great at closing out matches, but really he was just putting so much pressure on the team. Moving on to the fifth match played so far, and that's the final one that we've got for today, that was between the Mumbai Indians and Kolkata Knight Riders. The Indians put up a great score of 195 for 5, and it wasn't much of a contest thereafter as the Knight Riders struggled through to 146 for 9. So there we have the games that we're on so far this week. So we'll go on to the scoreboard, Miss Ford, and bring that up.
Like that game cost me. Yeah, I was backing Morgan there and Andre Russell, and they just didn't fire. I was happy with Narayan's performance.
They absolutely. That's probably. I mean, look, Ed, when you look at that 195 for 5, I think Narayan went for only 22 off his 4 overs. So
yeah, I think some bloke did go for 59. I think
Cummins went for plenty. I think off his 3 overs, he went for about 39 off his 3 overs. I think it was off the top of my head.
What does he get paid? 2 million?
3 million.
3 mil. So you've got a good Kiwi coaching contingent in there as well. What I noticed last night: Kyle Mills, Brendan McCullum, SNC, New Zealand cricket, Chris Donaldson. He's in there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've got a really good Kiwi mix on that side, but yeah, I don't know about their bowling was a bit wayward, to be honest.
Well, there we go. So we come to the table, and as we can see, I mean, obviously very early stages of the tournament with only 1 week gone. I think the Mumbai Indians will be happy that they got the win this morning, because even though it's early, they wouldn't really want to be going in, going along with 2 losses from 2 games played.
Well, wouldn't be their first time going bottom of the table after the first round of the competition to then make a massive splash, well, more than a splash, and then actually big play to make the finals and winning it. They're quite big. They're very slow starters on a regular basis.
Yep. But you want to be there at the business end of the season, isn't it? Not at the start. You want to.
I'm surprised RCB have got a win. They aren't very good for many wins up front or at any time really.
Yep. So we'll sort of we'll see more as next week. We'll see as the table develops. Just go over the games that will be coming up in this next week. We've got the Kings 11 Punjab will be playing the Royal Challengers Bangalore on the 25th. Chennai Super Kings versus the Delhi Capitals on the 26th. Kolkata Knight Riders versus the Sunriser Hyderabad on the 27th. Rajasthan Royals playing the Kings 11 Punjab again. They'll be backing up on the 28th. Royal Challengers Bangalore backing up again against the Mumbai Indians on the 29th. And the Delhi Capitals versus the Sunrisers Hyderabad on the 30th. Out of those games, anything in particular that stands out that you'll be looking forward to?
Hussein, what do you reckon?
I think it's just different conditions. I think, listening to the coaches afterwards as well speak after those first few games, it's different conditions for those players, and getting used to them. So you got to remember, a lot of the guys coming out of CPL, especially the contingent out of there, they're literally 5 or 6 days quarantine, and then they're getting used to conditions, different types of wickets as well. So yeah, I think first few rounds will be a bit wayward. I think KKR last night got a bit of a shock as well. Brendan McCullum sort of saying, well, it's the first sort of game. There's a few guys that just literally came off straight out of the hotel and straight into the paddock sort of thing. So I think, or in the desert in the sense, I guess. But yeah, so it's different as well. No crowds, little things that make cricket. And Taran, you've been in a professional environment. It's sort of the way I sort of put it today to someone was it's like watching park cricket, but with really good cricketers. So it's like just random stuff happening, balls getting collected from the crowd. Like no one's in the crowd, so literally in the stands, and just little things where. I think as game 2, game 3, and the squads actually gel a little bit more, they'll get more out of it.
Yeah, you're right. It must be tough. It is Mental Awareness Week this week, so it must be tough for them mentally as well, just to be. Forget the CPL guys; it's their job, so don't worry about their families and stuff. But still, to be cooped up in a room, having very limited amount of options that they could pursue outside of playing and training and even engaging with people, they must be quite tough. I read an article where Paddy Upton said basically what I took away from it was whoever can keep their sanity over the longest is probably going to make the playoffs.
So it comes down to the management then, obviously, to try and I suppose keep the minds fresh. Because as you say, if you're just going to be cooped up in your room and you're going cricket room, it is really going to be difficult, isn't it, for the length of the tournament? So the management to come up with innovative ways to keep their minds fresh is going to be crucial as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. How would you do it? Like Hussein, what do you reckon? Like,
we're talking about Bollywood
stuff, right?
actors, yeah. So I mean, if you look at the inside and watch the clips from the teams, they've all been provided rooms. So essentially, it's not just turn up, stay in a hotel, play cricket like CPL probably was. They've actually got interactive rooms. They bring the whole India to the Dubai, and you can get more in Dubai probably as well. So. Team manager of Chennai Super Kings, if you sort of follow him and sort of, his socials and so forth, they're phenomenal in what they're getting, in that sense as well. I think Maxwell or someone tweeted, where do I, Finch, I think it was, or someone, where do I actually get some golf? How do we get golf into our hotel? So, and the next day they put a photo up, they're playing interactive golf. So it's like, yeah. It's remember they are in Dubai as well, so I guess you can bring all these things into that environment, I guess. But in the same respect, I think you're right. Mental, it is the mental who is fittest in that sense, in terms of who's going to be able to withstand that time period there. As you can tell, sort of like with CPL, as Ashwin I think mentioned earlier show, it was the guys that had the best camaraderie. At the end of the day as well. So that probably helps. And how do we get that connection as well? TKR in the end were just too strong, right? But
they are the CSK of that campaign, though, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're the big boys. They're also the bigger cricketing country off the teams. They managed to convince all their homegrown players, the Trinidad residents, to actually want to play for them. Because initially they used to have Narayan elsewhere, and Pollard was with Barbados, so they managed to get them all back in. So which is obviously through the KKR money, which allowed them to kind of bring them back into the fold. So they'll be hard to beat at the best of times.
Yeah.
Let alone add Brendan McCullum's brain into the mix. So
yeah.
Brendan McCullum will want some horse races up on TVs that they can sort of follow. That's what he'll be after.
That's Dubai, so they can make anything happen there. If they can make it snow there.
Make it snow. Hey, look, so we'll bring up those results for those matches that I've just rattled off. That'll be happening this week, and we'll look at in next week's edition of Swinging from the Hip. We'll look at those results and the table again and see how things are starting to stack up. We might start to get a bit of an idea of where things are going, but again, how many? Actually, my bad. How many weeks are we looking at for the IPL here? When's it actually wrap up?
That's a good question.
Well, I guess the 2nd of November.
The 2nd of November? Yeah, so that's we've got good sort of 6
5
weeks.
6 weeks, 5, 6 weeks.
5, yes, yeah. So that's Feb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they're playing double headers either. I think just playing single game a day.
Yep. It appears that way. I mean, like at the moment for the first 2 weeks, there doesn't appear to be any double headers at all happening over the next fortnight, sort of thing. So looks like it. So we'll bring the results as we do. We are trying to look. Actually, I'll take this opportunity. If there's anybody out there that would like to get involved with running an IPL show over the next 6 weeks or so, DM us, send us a message, and we'll get together and we'll see if we can actually put together an IPL show for the next few weeks while the tournament's going. So get in touch and we'll make it happen. Anyway, moving on to the topic for today, which is going to be, and our second go at it, take 2, is how is COVID impacting community cricket and club cricket? So we've got Taryn on and Hussein on, both involved with their respective clubs. First of all, let's just go over the clubs that you guys are from and where they are and how they're placed in terms of within the cricketing fraternity, so to speak. Hussein, you want to start off and just tell us a little bit about the club that you belong to and you work at?
Yeah, so obviously Parnell Cricket Club, got the shirt on today. Director of Cricket. Club's coming off the Auckland Club of the Year and hopefully the New Zealand Club of the Year. Proud History is one of New Zealand. We say we're the oldest, but we're one of New Zealand's oldest cricket clubs as well. So proud history in that space. But everything from year ones all the way to veterans cricket or over 60s cricket played at the club as well. So really good community-based cricket club in Remuera and Parnell area.
Taryn, tell us about. Well, I think people will be aware of CUMI, but just go over it again and tell us about your involvement at the club and about the club a little bit.
CUMI Cricket Club, northwest of Auckland, very small boutique cricket club, which is quite a community-focused club as well, where it has been a community status club for many years and achieved principal club status a couple of years ago. So the club is growing with the housing and all the developments that are happening around CUMI. So it's a period of consolidation, and it's ever so slowly kind of building as we can. But my role there is a bit part of bit of a Ravindra Jadeja, I think, sang Mandareke got sacked for saying a bits and pieces thing. So I kind of pick up a few things with my chairman. So I'd like to say I'm 2IC at the role, from an administrative perspective all the way through to coaching and playing a little bit as a keeper.
Oh, you're going to be playing as a keeper this year, are you?
I've played as a keeper. If they let me bowl seam, that'll be it, the dream. Basically, the bucket
list. You just want to go in there and bowl a few short ones, don't you?
Well, yeah. My accident.
Hey, look, so moving on to obviously the topic, as we mentioned, is the COVID-19's impact. And look, to start off with, I suppose, just let's see if it's actually affecting you both similarly. How is it affecting Parnell Cricket Club with the COVID-19 and the restrictions we have in place, etc.? What's happening?
Yeah, so we're obviously, I guess, Auckland Cricket run the 16 cricket clubs in Auckland. So we're one of 16, and I'm fairly new as well. So I guess there's, as Tauren said, there's principal clubs and there's community clubs. Is that correct, Tauren?
Yep.
Yep. So we are in that top tier, I guess. But essentially, it's just putting things in place to allow cricket to happen for our members. So particularly my role is to try and engage and make sure that we're providing a safe environment for people to play cricket. But I guess the main thing is also the unknowns of COVID as well. We're going into an unknown sort of season. Looking at football, round ball soccer, looking at rugby, looking at even the marathon last weekend in Rotorua. Um, there's a lot of unknowns. So I guess right now is registration period in Auckland or in New Zealand, but it's very hard to sell something when you don't know what's sort of what's ahead as well. So I think for a young mum, a young dad wanting to sign their child up, it's a very tricky time because if they did play soccer or if they did play hockey or other sports, they may be out of pocket by playing quarter of the season and paying a full sub, for example, buying new cricket boots or rugby boots or soccer boots or new jerseys and so forth as well. And cricket's not a cheap game, so thinking it from a user point of view, yeah, it's a lot of unknowns, unfortunately.
Darren, what's your experience so far being at QMU?
Oh, look, the registration numbers are probably slow, but when we compare it to other years, it's not too far off the mark. With the winter codes being pushed all the way into October to give them half a chance of having some semblance of a season, it's really it's a bit of a pause period, I think, for a lot of parents. Like Hussein just said, like they pretty much found out a week ago that their season's completely cancelled. It's a case of taking stock of what is it that they want to do. Registrations have been slow, but we are kind of putting in systems and comms in place to encourage parents to just register and not necessarily worry about the finances so much just yet. We're, going through having conversations around how we can offer refunds, credits, and make sure the parents are not out of the pocket. For us, as a small club, the big driver is getting people out west, northwest playing cricket.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we can capitalize on a lot of inactivity from the winter, and a lot of kids and adults will hope fingers crossed that they want to get out there, do stuff, and they won't be traveling, so we might have a bit of an uptake around Labour weekend.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll just obviously with my son playing winter sports, normally he plays rugby and he normally has something like somewhere between 12 and 15 games in a season. This year, I think we might have made it to 5. But Hussein's point about, the winter sports are a lot cheaper. Well, rugby is. I know soccer's actually can be quite expensive, but rugby's a lot cheaper to play. And so when we only played 5 games, it wasn't really an issue. It's just like, okay, it becomes a donation to the club because you want the club to, not go to the club and say, I want $30 out of my 70. So you do sort of say, hey, it's okay. But I suppose with cricket, you were looking at fees of $150, $170, and you sort of do, that's yeah. Are we going to get the games in, and how's it going to go? But on the flip side of that, Taryn's 100% right. The kids are actually champing at the bit to get out there and play sport. They've been sitting around over winter. They haven't played the games on the Saturday, and they can't wait to get involved into the Saturday morning sport.
Yeah, we found like speaking to some of the sports staff at my school, and we noticed that the kids really just wanted to play and train, and they're asking questions around bubbles and like we're all, hey, our bubble against their bubble, why can't we play, etc. And we kind of what we took away from that was playing sport as they're used to playing after school on a Monday for hockey and Tuesday, Thursday for football, it gave them a sense of normality. That was their continuity, and that's what they did on the regular. And it's a sense of, not necessarily a sense of belonging, but that security and the feel of things are normal by just doing what they always do. And the uncertainty kind of really threw them off. I think they weren't quite sure. And so what you're saying, like if we get the opportunity to kind of continue to offer sport to the kids, it'll give them that continuity, and they're used to doing this. This is what kids in New Zealand do in the summer. They play cricket.
And normality comes back. Yeah. The
Yeah.
same. Well, what have you guys been doing? I mean, like Taryn mentioned about, telling parents to just register. Don't worry about the financial side of it. Have you guys been doing anything special or different in terms of trying to get registrations in?
No, so we're very fortunate. We've got an indoor centre. So essentially, we 3-lane indoor centre in Shore Road. So we run winter programs. So we've had good numbers through the winter programs that allow us to get kids to come. If they are part of winter sports, then they go to their schools in the catchment area and say, get involved with cricket per se. So I think we're about 80% year to year in terms of registration. But there's a lot of unknowns, right? So those parents who do want to register but don't, in the same sense, are sort of hesitant in the sense that, well, we've paid already X amount of dollars for winter sports. How do we then cover that cost? It's not the cheapest sport, and in our catchment area in particular, yachting, sailing, frisbee, random hockey, and other sports. Summer touch is massive in our region. They're very popular. So I think if we date back 80s, 90s, early 2000s, cricket was New Zealand's favourite summer sport. I don't think it is now. I think there's multiple sports that are actually evolving and more people are getting involved. The cost of cricket is quite high, but the unknown factor of COVID is probably the biggest thing as well at the moment. There's a lot of fear in the community, right? But in the same sense, I think, it all comes down to, I think, as you spoke about, Ashwin, rugby, they don't really pay a full affiliation fee where cricket clubs do. There's only 16 clubs that play in Auckland, and they pay an affiliation. So what percentage comes back, for example, when you pay a membership? Does a club, are clubs going to be able to survive? Have they got contingency plans in place? It's sort of a scary part as well. That hopefully everything goes smooth and we look back at it and go, wow, what a season. But you only got to look in the UK. Schools are back closed again. You only got to go back to when we were great and we were running and everything was smooth, and then we just went back in our silo boxes again, lockdown. So there's a lot of unknowns in that place, and I and Torren will probably get their stress lines and so forth. We have to plan ahead. And I think that starts from NZC and Auckland Cricket as well, is providing those resources to help and making sure that clubs are they're able to stand while the communities are sort of going, well, should I or shouldn't I play as well?
I was just going to ask the question: what leadership or support or processes, procedures are being filtered down from Auckland Cricket, if anything?
What's happened in the past? I'm fairly new here, so how does it work? I guess last season is a prime example. Parnell won a 2-day championship, but there was no real ruling around it, right? Yep. Howick Pakuranga, one of the top clubs, got relegated last year, but they did finish, near the bottom. But you got to have rules and these things in place. But learnings from last year.
More sort of thinking in terms of the COVID aspect of it. Is there anything that sort of like they've driven down from above in terms of what's going to be happening or changes that are going to be made?
They are working on it. It's evolving, the whole thing. They're continuing to look at their options of starting from credits and refunds for pro rata. I don't know what whatever calculations they're putting together. If the campaigns don't go through, what that means to the user from a financial perspective, through to how to declare winners if only half a campaign is done. The club managers have been very proactive in asking some some very strong, tough questions, and all that's kind of put the onus back at Auckland Cricket to come up with a variety of contingency plans, depending on how things unfold. Initially, we were all hoping, oh, cool, we're back to level 1, don't have to worry about it. That's always going to be plan A, but I think now the focus has turned to plan B and C, having seen the winter counterparts completely battle their way and be demolished through, this winter season.
Yeah, look, I mean, I just going back to the winter sport experience, just what Hussein was sort of referring to. It's just like, as a parent, I suppose the frustration was the uncertainty of everything. You just didn't know whether you're going to be playing this weekend or not going to be playing this weekend, or you're going to have 3 weeks off or 4 weeks off. Can you plan something else? Can't you plan something else? As a parent, that was the frustrating part, is that you didn't really know how things were going to unfold.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I think in the bigger scheme of things, when you look at everything else that's going on, not having a little bit of sport for a period of time, it's not the end of the world.
You got to, you got to look at a different view though. Cricket clubs are not built on playing on a Saturday. They're not built on playing to win trophies. They're built on what is the 30-meter circle and what is inside that 30-meter circle. If you put a big circle and you put a little circle in the 30-meter circle, and why do cricket clubs exist for over hundreds of years? It's not because they were all trying to win trophies, for example. So it's, you put in the friendships, the mateships, the beers, the catch ups, the meeting new friends. It's all that comes with it. So essentially, it's a crucial part. They in Australia, we learned that they're not cricket clubs to win trophies. They're cricket clubs to become community hubs.
I think carry on. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, you sort of like what COVID's showing, and something that Taryn alluded to in terms of the kids just want to play, and it's not necessarily about competition. Well, it is. They want to have a game against somebody, but it's not in the sense of winning a trophy, is it? It's just that you just want to get out there and play a game, and be out there with your mates. And it's sort of, interestingly enough, it goes back to some of the stuff that not just cricket but rugby as well. I can't speak for the other sports, but because I'm only involved with cricket and rugby, but both of those sports are trying to emphasize the fun factor for children at junior level, and not about building your black caps when they're 5. It's just about getting out there and having fun and playing the game. And I think that COVID's sort of emphasizing, or the impact of COVID is emphasizing that. It's just getting out there and being involved.
Yeah. There's an elitism, obviously, because you still have to produce the top players. And if you look at it, there's 16 clubs, and I don't actually know what date Plunket Shield, for example, starts. But the greatest thing that could happen is on Saturday there's a cricket game happening. I don't know if you did speak about it earlier in the show, but there's a game of cricket, and Australia and New Zealand are playing. So I think for cricket in general, that's the greatest thing that can happen. Yes, it's a female game. Yes, it's in Australia. It's not in New Zealand. All those other factors, but at the end of the day, it's more cricket. People just want to watch cricket, right?
We're looking at the positives here, right? And the fact is that, again, another positive out of COVID-19 is that it's going to be great for the women's game, because people are waiting for cricket. People are wanting to watch cricket. And it's like the White Ferns are playing the Aussie team that's starting on Saturday, and people are going to watch it because they want to watch cricket, and there's nothing to watch.
Right.
So, and it's just like, it's great, because one of the problems with the women's game has been just getting eyeballs on it. Once you get eyeballs on it, they'll sort of come back.
Correct.
The game quality's there, they'll come back. This will give it that opportunity just to get those eyeballs onto it. So again, just another positive that comes out of a COVID-19 situation.
No, spot on. But just looking at that elitism, I think at the top end, and I think the COVID's, the guys aren't going to play, and they're going to play for the premierships and the top level and whatnot. But there's one-day teams all around Auckland that just turn up with their mates through communities, or with over 60s, for example. And the reasons why, that's probably where it's going to be affected a lot more when those games don't happen. We all know one guy who just loves the cricket club, right? It doesn't matter what cricket club you're at. There's always that one guy or girl, that's part of the community and part of the fabric of that cricket club. So they're the ones that are going to be suffering at the end of the day, or on the Saturday night when the teams have finished and they all come together. That's their Saturday night for the whole summer. That's what cricket is about, essentially. That'll be missing. But hopefully we go ahead. But like Tyrone said, I think Auckland Cricket are putting plans in place. I think you're looking at what Victoria have done. They've created a lot of the 50-odd competitions. So we've only got the one competition, 1.5 million people. They've got 5 million in Victoria, but they've got about 50 plus different associations with 40 plus teams, clubs, sorry. So, you do the maths. There's a lot more numbers in different associations running different rules, different, protocols and everything. At the end of the day, though, they're changing their rules to comfort that. So clubs can end up playing. They're playing a lot of white ball cricket. What does that mean, though? That means you got to buy coloured uniforms, which costs more money, essentially as well. But the only reason they did at white ball is they get a whole season out of it. Everyone, like you said, Taran, they'll just play like IPL. They get to play one round each. You're sort of done.
Yeah.
That innovation is probably the key at this time in any sport. I'll give you a prime example. I think it was Rocky Khan from Ponsonby Rugby Club talking about the women's competition this year for Auckland Rugby was smaller competition, but it was just compact. But they all played each other once, and it was a smaller comp. They got it done. Whereas they knew that the women's domestic competition was coming up. They need to find their best players. So how do they do that in the in that time period? They had to play a shorter tournament, but make it stronger. Bring more teams together. Make clubs work together and actually do that. So essentially, what they found was the product was diluted. You don't have to have 16 clubs. You have 10 clubs, and you do it better. And a white ball competition might be the way to go because you do get maximum games. Here we've got top teams and lower teams. Kimi might be able to, with their new wicket keeper, might come out and snack, Parnell, for example, or Grafton, or or whatnot. And it makes it challenging in that sense as well.
Speaking of the sort of like, I mean, I know sort of like we're not the elite side of it is not just the only part of cricket, but in terms of that, I was hoping to get Sharubin on as being sort of a Prem's coach or / director of cricket there at Grafton. But what's your guys seeing in terms of the Prems and how they're managing to do their training before the season kicks off, and what they're doing differently?
I guess I don't know, Taran, you want to jump in there?
No, you go for it. You're the one with the indoor centre.
Well, indoor centre or no indoor centre, I think we've got a male and a female coach for both premier teams, and essentially the approach was how do we do this and how do we do it better. So the thirds and fourths coach Callum has proactively gone and said, well, we've got 10 people allowed at an indoor centre. How are we going to be in a position to get 10 bubbles? So they're being proactive rather than reactive and going, we can't do it. So training in bubbles is very simple. First 10 people who write their names in, you're in the first session. The next one, get out of there, make sure you sanitize and you get out, and make sure you use a QR code, and the next 10 comes in, for example. But it's being proactive as well. I think the greatest thing, though, is out of these sessions, what we found is that guys are getting bigger, longer hits. They're getting more bowls. Like their fielding's improved over that time period. So, I mean, international teams do it all the time. They train in bubbles because they don't have the outsiders. That's where net bowlers come in, for example. So it's actually making people think a little bit different, which is kind of good, right? In that sense as well. Training methods have changed.
Absolutely. Darren, what's been happening in terms of getting ready for the senior season, the Prem season at QMU?
Oh, look, what Hussein said, it's actually just we worked intense for a long time. The best way to develop your skill is to actually have small group sessions, professional teams. That's how professional teams train in the winter. They train in groups of 4s and 6s. They're then split off into S&C and skill-based trainings, etc. Clubs like us and other clubs that don't necessarily have the funds to hire indoor nets for an extended period of time are forced to kind of get 30 people jammed into 3 nets and give them all a hit and a giggle and off we go, to kind of tick off a box. But this time it hasn't been the case. So we actually identified almost like a committed / youth cricketers that we see playing a key role for the club in 2 to 3 years' time. And we just went, we'll have these guys training. And then from there on in, it's actually a case of getting creative. We got told it's bubbles of 10 with the lane in the middle. That's got to stay empty. And another venue was actually operating in bubbles of 10 per net, etc. So everyone's interpretation of these bubbles and how they work are different, and their rules that they presented to the users, external users, are different as well. So we've just been complying to that. There's again, it's a bit like creative accounting. It's how can you get creative and comply with the Sport NZ and Ministry of Health's guidelines and maximize your time. So, like our hockey turf, I heard hockey turfs per quarter you can have bubbles of 10. So they can technically have 40 people on a pitch. You put cones down, you separate them and say, right, you enter this way, you train here, we train here, and they can get 40 per hour. So well, like I said, it's allowed for us to actually focus on skills as opposed to just run nets because our numbers have been so great. But now that we're back to 100 people gatherings, I'm sure it'll be a free for all down at suburbs with every single net jam packed.
But I think the point to make though, T, is that it has allowed coaches to be really proactive of their approach, and I think the feedback that we've received has been really positive in that sense as well. Longer hits and actually getting something out of a session rather than turning up, high fiving, have a bat and then you're out the door sort of thing. But I think for coaches, that's a smart thing as well. Is that how do I actually get the best out of a player by actually coming in, having a set mindset. You've only got an hour. How do we actually get something out of this?
Well, that's exactly it, right? I think it's made people appreciate that 1 hour slot because they know they're actually privileged to be invited to these sessions, for one. There's a whole lot of people. For every 10 that you pick, there's about 40 that you're leaving out. So they know that they're lucky to be there, and they're there to they are actively maximizing their time as opposed to just fart-assing around for the 90 minutes and then cruising.
I was going to say you hope that do you think that that attitude will change, will flow on through going forward? I suppose it's more a case of you hope that it does, doesn't it? And the fact is that they've seen the benefits of being a bit more planned around, even with the larger group, being a bit more planned about what you're trying to achieve and your objectives while you're there.
Yeah, I think so. I think the biggest thing in Auckland is that there's only 16 clubs, and the principal clubs, they have a coach. It's just the coach has got to be smarter, right? In this instance, all through that lockdown period, and then obviously when the nets open, we had president's grade, for example, training. So essentially they were doing the 10 bubbles, but that didn't stop the 35 to 60-year-olds turning up and doing it in bubbles as well. But now it's a free fall. You have 50, 30, 40, 50 of these guys all turning up, and they'll go back to the normality again. So heading into it, it's just being proactive and making those subtle changes.
Yeah, I think it's important. We don't go back and get complacent. So a lot of these protocols that Cricket Victoria put together and Auckland Cricket will release, they've already released a little bit, but then you add a bit of detail, your own club's expectations around hygiene and social distancing. If you can try and continue to maintain and you expect everyone kind of does a similar thing, we will give ourselves a good shot at getting through a full season as well. Like, last thing you need is one little mishap and bang, that'll be the end of the cricket season as well. So there is the onus, like ball maintenance, where I know one team has just given every single bowler a ball and said, right, that's yours for the season. Don't ask for any more. Don't share with anyone. What you wish to do with it's your business.
How much budget does QMU got to Tas Cricket sponsoring balls down at
Mate,
QMU? What's the
we
go
don't, we
here?
don't, we don't use $179 turfs. I'm not talking about QMU anyway, but I took one new
Okay.
ball out and I'm there counting it. Going, you ball 3. That just use a tablecloth, pass it over to the next guy. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. But what you just said there as well is probably leadership needs to be sent from the top. So we're paying a fee, or users are. So I mean, from the DOC point of role is looking at a user and a member. So essentially, that member needs to know that what does cricket look like in certain levels. For example, as well. So whereas at the moment, I don't think we've been provided that. So it's kind of an unknown you're going into. But as you said, as a season progresses, I think it's not just Premier, it's one day teams. What does a season look like under level 1? What does cricket look like under level 1? Because most parks in Auckland or every ground will have a guy and his dog walking around, but under certain levels you can't have anyone around grounds. So I know leagues in Victoria starting in November, you can't have anyone except for the COVID officer, the scorer, and the coach, and then the
No,
11
so New
point
Zealand,
taker.
so ours is 100 per pitch.
But where is
Yeah.
that? There is no Sport New Zealand doesn't have any guidelines around summer sport
And
out. Auckland Cricket don't have guidelines. What does it look like in levels to then,
no,
actually say?
there is documentation on Sport NZ website. There probably isn't to the detail that you're hoping to see, but it does give you a broader overview of what it looks like. Now, here's a spanner in the works, though. I've just said, yeah, it's 100 per pitch, but we don't have pitches. We have overlapping grounds.
So for rugby, it was 100 in the winter, and that's Sport New
It's
Zealand
100
released.
per pitch. Yeah, it's per pitch. So if you have 2 pitches side by side, you can have 200 people there,
But in the same
including
sense,
players and spectators.
we
But
have a
then, as you
three-lane
said, they're
indoor centre.
overlapping.
Yeah, we have a
But
three-lane
for
indoor
cricket,
centre.
it's
You can only have
overlapping,
10.
right? For
Yeah,
cricket's
correct.
overlapping, right? So
Yeah, there's a lot of those, like you mentioned earlier, I think in terms of the guidelines of indoor centres. Suburbs New Lynn and West Auckland has a 5-lane centre, and the wording is a bubble of 10. Now, 10 people in a 5-lane centre, that's just a waste of a whole lot of nets, right? But also that's loss of revenue for clubs and so forth. Whereas we have a 3-lane centre, or Cornwall might have a 3-lane centre, for example, and we can use 1 and 3. So there's got to be more rulings around that, and that means leadership as well, because it is a loss of revenue, but also at the same sense, it's less people playing the game. I think there was something that came up before, Aaron. Guys are going to play cricket anyway. It's probably the biggest opportunist time to play cricket right now is
Oh, mate,
anywhere and everywhere, right?
we were down at the Nets on Saturday or Sunday last weekend, and there were 2 games of cricket going on. Full, I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, like they were two full teams, 2 games, 2 full teams.
Yep.
Obviously not in full whites, no, and it's casual. It's a casual game, but
Yep.
2 games going on.
Yeah.
The guys are going to get out there and play, aren't they?
That's right. So, I mean, that's the thing, is that we're creating this inclusive environment by putting all these things in place. People just want to get out and play cricket. So, hopefully these guidelines will bring a little bit more clarity, though, for people who want to sign up. Like I said, there's a lot of social teams, for example, at Parnell that haven't signed up this year.
I think what you're going to get, I think what you might see is a raft of injuries up front because they're ill-equipped, they haven't trained enough, and they haven't loaded strong enough. And we saw coming out of the first lockdown, the fields weren't ready. They were soft underfoot. Kids hadn't trained for an extended period of time, and there was a lot of injuries coming through. And I think we might see a lot of that. To start with, then my concerns are, and I'm not sure if you've seen this in Parnell, but some of our kids were training on school campus, and there's people walking past, elderly couples and people walking past on the evening walks, commenting from the outside, going, "Hey, you shouldn't be out there playing. You're not allowed. We're still in level 2." And so people don't necessarily understand what you can and can't do, and you're going to get a lot of tension between groups as well. So you're going to start having people walking past going, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You're too close to him." The first and second slip don't have 2 meters between them. So there's a I think you're gonna start getting all these things that start adding
You got to
on.
run past the umpire every ball.
Well, I think that's the case in Australia. You have to hand the ball over every over.
Drop the
Oh,
ball,
yeah.
at the stumps. Literally drop the ball at the stumps, and then one carrier takes it and puts it at the next stump. And there's a whole lot of rules. But see, those things got to come and play if we want to go ahead as well. It depends on what levels. But I think the first thing you said, Torrin, there is that people are undercooked, for example, prior to a season. That comes into proactive coaching as well, right? So essentially, is your coaches actually making sure that the players are ready to play? For example, you wouldn't send an All Black out there and play a full rugby game if you know that he's going to be undercooked. So essentially,
Yeah, that's
cricket.
different the way professional, that's a professional game compared to an amateur who's working a 9 to 5 job 5 days a week. And
Yeah,
I mean, coaches are fine for the first team, but what about the 1 day grades that haven't had the chance to get into the indoor nets because they've just not been available? They're going to start in 4 weeks' time,
yeah.
and they're not going to hold back. Those guys do not know how to hold back.
I think
The
that's
1 day
those
grade.
guys that were playing in suburbs last week.
That game we saw at Keith, those games we saw going on at Keith Park, didn't.
Keith,
Although the fielding wasn't great, they weren't really holding back in terms of running into the crease when they're bowling.
No, and that's the good part of Keith Park, isn't it? Anytime you go past, that place is going to be full of cricket
but I
enthusiasts.
think that
wanting to play cricket.
that's keeping cricket alive. I think there's probably one thing though, Ashwin and T. I think it is essentially it creates more opportunities to get more physical activity. So more people may not play club cricket, but they'll play social cricket. So it's an opportunist time to look at those things. Auckland Business
What it looks
House
like.
League, or Last Man Stands. There may be more people playing those games because people don't have time. They've lost their job. It's not a cheap sport to play. So you're paying, if you're playing Premier Senior cricket, it's 400, near 400 bucks. Then you're buying bat. Then you're buying, all these things that are costs. Every Saturday you're spending 8 hours, so you're buying a drink, a pie, and everything else that comes with it. So it's a very expensive sport to play. Whereas I think there's opportunities for clubs to become smarter. All in different areas. I mean, QMU is a growing area. Essentially, and you've got a large South Asian base that want to just play cricket. So how do you actually provide for those people to just play cricket as well? And we go back to the first thing we spoke about, is that community. So what is a sense of community, and how can you actually provide that as well? Seldomly in cricket, we just offer, this is Prem Men's, this is reserves, this is the President's grade, this is, whereas I think what QMU have done, and Eden Roscoe and other Papatois and so forth, they've actually looked outside the box and gone, what do you actually want? You want to play T20s on a Sunday? Yep, come and play this.
Well, I suppose that's a good place to sort of leave it with a question there in terms of what's going to be coming in the future. And maybe we can sort of have a look at the end of the season and see how the season's unfolded, what developments, what innovations came out of it because of the changed environments and that. So I think it's great that we've got a topic for the future to sort of look at how things did actually develop. And just like to thank you guys for actually coming on the show tonight. Obviously, we got there in the end, yes. And it was great. And it was like, good insights in terms of how COVID's impacting, or the not necessarily impacting, actually bringing benefits or actually highlighting issues as well, or developments that we need to make. So thanks again for coming on the show. And to all our viewers and listeners out there, thank you also for tuning in again to Swinging from the Hip. And we look forward to having you again next week. Remember, right here on New Zealand Sport Radio, we've got the morning sports briefing every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's right round the week. And then on Monday nights, we have the Driving More show. Tuesday nights, we have a basketball show. Wednesday nights, we have the Rugby League show. And Thursday night, the best night of the week with the Swinging from the Hip with our cricket show. And then Fridays and Sundays, a preview and review show for rugby over the weekend. But as we said, really appreciate the fact that you tune in. Make sure that you hit that share button. It's great that you hit the like, but the share's better. Gets our name out there more. And we'll see you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. for more cricket with Swinging from the Hip. Thank you.